of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank everybody who's joined us remotely. If you have any problems hearing us or connecting during the course of this hearing, don't hesitate to reach out to Sean Rush, who's been communicating with you. He's amazing at his job. All right, before we call to order, Ms. Bleasdale, is that you right? Are you right there? Okay, hi. You are the only challenger. So this is the to address your challenges to certain mail-in applications. Are you proceeding with a representation from an attorney, or are you pro se, meaning you do not have an attorney? Okay. Given that you are pro se, I just want to make you aware that I am a lawyer. I'm not acting in a lawyer in this capacity. I'm acting as a board member. Mr. Alberts is not a lawyer. He's my other board member present. Mr. McBlain is a lawyer, but he happens to not be present as he has indicated that he has a conflict proceeding in this hearing. Mr. Parks is a lawyer. All right. He's our solicitor. And I say all of that to you to say that this is a very serious hearing. As if you've watched, I think you've been present perhaps at some of our board meetings, and you may be aware how seriously all three of us, whatever party we come from, take the enfranchisement of eligible voters. And so you've challenged the enfranchisement. In other words, if you were to be successful, it would disenfranchise the voters. And there are legal reasons that you may be able to accomplish that if they are not eligible, and then you can demonstrate that they are not eligible. All right. But I want to be very clear to you that I'm not going to give you any legal advice, but I do need you to understand the implications of your actions. There's a couple I want to start out with before we really start taking evidence in this hearing. So I consider this, Mr. Solicitor, a preliminary matter for housekeeping.
I agree. This is preliminary.
Thank you. Ms. Bleasdale, a couple of things. One, your challenges have come under the statute with a cost of $10 per challenge, and you've posted that properly. Please be aware that if we start this proceeding officially and we start to take evidence or have argument or discussion or hear in particular testimony, which will be, I assume, are we going to take the under oath or?
Yes, under oath.
Under oath. And we have a court reporter present, so it will be recorded. And all of that is because while we are an election board, this is a hearing that has very serious legal implications. So I do need you to know first that if you proceed to present any evidence, we will consider that if you are unsuccessful, you will have forfeited the money that you have put forward for those challenges. Do you understand that? Okay, thank you. The second part I want to say to you, and this is the part that's most sensitive, I really want to make sure you understand. So because I'm a lawyer, anytime you have a question, stop me to make sure you understand what I've said. I can't give you legal advice, but I can tell you the process. And I can tell you that is, given the seriousness of the nature of what you have brought forth, which if you're right, then we do not want ineligible voters voting. So believe me, that is really important to us. And I think our team does a really great job of trying to make sure that that doesn't happen. And to the extent that there's been any minimal voter fraud, it's been a one-off person applying for their dead parents' application, and they've been caught and they've been referred to the DA's office at that point. So, but if you are going to proceed with such an action of trying to disenfranchise voters, there are, if you do so without sufficient basis,
Excuse me.
Yeah,
You're out of order.
we're not going to do that. This is a really serious hearing, Mr. Stenstrom.
Mr. Stenstrom, if you speak out of order one more time, you will be removed from this hearing. You're so advised.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a good point. And also, Mr. Stenstrom is not a lawyer. Okay. Okay. I have a solicitor here. If I say something legal.
That's it. He goes right now. Thank you.
You're not her representative. You're not a lawyer. You're not in that capacity. You were asked not to speak.
Sir, you are out of order and you will be removed, and you've been warned and you will leave now. Thank you.
You were not represented here. You were not a party to the challenges. I did not see your name on any of the documents provided by Ms. Bleasdale and filed. So you were here as an observer and you were asked not to speak, and you spoke. Well, you weren't observing.
Observe is not speak, and I warned you and you spoke some more, and I couldn't have been clearer. And no, you weren't. She wasn't speaking to you, sir. She was speaking to Ms. Bleasdale, and you will leave now, sir. Thank you.
responded to Ms. Lichtenheim. It is not lawful to remove.
Sir, there's no debate here. You have been removed from this proceeding. Please leave. I am absolutely authorized to remove you. Yes, I am, sir. Yeah, and you've disqualified your right to participate, sir. Please leave.
We are all in
Sir,
agreement
you may
that you are
monitor
leaving
this
this
online.
room. You have spoken out of order. You were asked not to speak out of order. Yeah. Mr. Senstrom, well, we don't know. You've not removed yourself, but just remember, disruption of a public meeting also has potential for criminal consequences. So please leave. Okay, we will resume the meeting. Ms. Bleasdale, I'm not in any way trying to threaten you. I'm trying to make sure you understand the legal consequences of your action. I'm sorry? Yes, so I'm going to tell you the last consequence that I want you to be aware of. If you seek to disenfranchise a voter without an individualized basis for doing so, then we could make a referral to the district attorney's office because there are consequences potentially criminally for doing such a thing. So now that you've been made aware, do you have any questions for me about what I've said?
I don't think so.
Okay, and are you ready to proceed with this hearing? Okay. All right. I will tell you when the time has come to take your argument. First, I want to have a matter of process. We're going to do a couple of things here. We have a lot of people here online, as you can see, who are voters who have been challenged individually by you. I want to make sure that we prioritize their opportunity to speak. I'm sure that their attendance here was not one that they intended before they were notified by our election bureau of this hearing. And so I want to make sure that we hear from them very swiftly in this proceeding. So that's one thing that we're going to do as a matter of process. The other is we're going to review some of the responses. What we did was, as required, right after we received your filings challenging, I believe, 143 voters. I understand, let me just actually stop here for a second. Have you withdrawn 4 of those challenges?
I think that I've drawn 3.
Okay, you know what, I am going to have you come forward. Now that we've started the hearing, I'm going to consider this official start of the hearing. So
I will note for the record, Madam Chair, that we have emails indicating that the following individuals or the challenges as to the applications for the following individuals have been withdrawn. And we can confirm that on the record, and I
let's
think
do
you
that.
should, but it's Rand Singer, Jennifer Singer, Jewel Clark, and Teresa Chen. Those 4, I've seen emails from Ms. Bleasdale or purporting to be from Ms. Bleasdale indicating that those challenges were withdrawn, and we can clarify that.
So let's do that, Ms. Bleasdale. Did you hear what the solicitor just said? Okay, let's swear her in. All right, please. Would you please raise, you're going to swear her in. No, I'd rather you do it. That's fine. I do know it.
You solemnly swear or affirm testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
All right. So let's start with those that are withdrawn. So we can, you said that you have 3. The solicitor just read 4 names.
The singers.
Okay,
That's 4.
so that is correct. So Mr. Parks, is the record sufficient, or should we put that after her swearing in? Are you comfortable that that's sufficient?
I am comfortable that the combination of that statement plus the email information that I've reviewed and we can make a part of this record will reflect that those 4 challenges were withdrawn before this proceeding was impaneled, shall we
Okay.
say.
Thank
I
you.
believe at least one of those individuals is on the Zoom call, Ms. Chen.
If that is correct, then perhaps it might be an opportunity to have her speak. Is that true?
I will say this, and I don't know that it would be necessary to belabor the record since the challenge has been withdrawn, and we certainly appreciate anybody who's taken the time out of their day to appear here to attempt to rebut the allegations against them in these challenges. But I don't think it's necessary since the challenge has been withdrawn. Yes, sir. Mr. Allen had a comment.
Madam Chair, I do think there would be value in hearing from Teresa Chen, as she did correspond directly with Ms. Bleasdale and did establish that they had no personal knowledge of each other and had no previous personal contact prior to the filing of this challenge. So I would
I
ask you to
certainly
take that
intend to
under
let her,
advisement.
yeah, Miss, all right, just as a matter of process, Mr. Parks, who needs to be sworn in? Who's going to speak today?
Well, any person who's going to be offering what I would deem to be testimony. So if people are appearing by Zoom and they're going to tell their story, including Ms. Chen, for example, then she should be sworn at the beginning of that process
Okay.
as any witness in a court.
Could I say something that might make this a lot
Sure.
easier for everybody?
Go ahead.
I'd like to preface the discussion with the fact that I've had enough interaction with members of the Bureau of Elections to be aware that the staff is extremely hardworking, very diligent, and I think they're very attentive, and I don't think they get enough credit for that from the public. I am not here to suggest that the challenges that I've made are based on any suspicion or belief that somebody is performing nefariously or trying to vote when they shouldn't be voting. Nothing could be further from my mind. I'm here strictly because what I see to be probably an issue of definition of terms. So I actually have been studying the voter rolls a little bit for a while, and I've had many occasions to see things which appear really odd on the surface. And if you do some investigation into it, they're perfectly normal and they make perfect sense. So my purpose here in bringing these challenges is not to cast aspersions on the voters or aspersions on the Bureau of Elections. I am simply finding that there are questions in my mind about some of the records that I think bear just normal everyday verification. I don't expect to find anything negative about them, but I think that you talk about process. I think that it's a really important matter of process simply to be able to look at something and say, oh, that looks funny. This person used to be here, but now they're here, but they asked for a mail-in ballot from somewhere else. Just normal things that you would check. Like if you go to any government office, they might want your identity. Like at the voter registry, at the,
Well,
motor vehicle.
then Ms. Bleasdale, I do have some questions for you then. I really want to make sure we're clear that what we're doing here, okay?
Yeah.
The only permissible ground for a challenge is that the mail-in ballot applicant is not a qualified elector.
Yes.
Okay.
But the basis for most of my challenges is really very simplistic. And I think that.
And
if I
let
can-
me just, sorry, I will ask you to state your basis, but let me
Okay.
ask you this, because I'm going to lead you in case, if I have it wrong, I want to make sure I don't have it wrong.
Sure.
Is the only basis for your challenge to any of these electors that they filled out a national change of address form?
For most of them, yes. What I believe they did is they filled out a permanent change of address form.
Sorry, I got to stop you though. That it's permanent is a function of that particular process for the postal
I
service.
understand.
It's not permanent for the purposes of determining whether
And that-
elector is qualified.
That is what I would like some answers to, because it just appears to me when I see that they changed out a permanent change of address form, to me, and this really is the root of the issues for me, words have basically ceased to mean things. So does permanent mean permanent or does permanent not mean permanent? And when I see a permanent change of address, when I look at that, it appears to me that that means that person has decamped Delaware County for somewhere else. And so it seems as though that person should not be voting from Delaware County. Now,
I'm going to pause you here for a second. I'm happy to give you some leeway and I want to hear from you. And I do want you to present this. You've proceeded with this proceeding. There's serious consequences to this. So I want to make sure you have a chance to be here. But I just want to, I want to establish something because there's something very important that you've said here that I want to make sure I'm hearing correctly. All right. An applicant's use of the national change of address form, their application for that may be permanent for the purposes of the Postal Service. That does not mean, for various reasons, and we're going to go through some of those examples today, that does not mean they are ineligible or not qualified to vote in Delaware County. It doesn't mean that. The use of the word permanent is not under the election code and is not by Delaware County in terms of determining a qualified elector. It is for the purpose of the Postal Service handling its process of mail, which is, we all know, difficult. for them
Yes,
to do.
yes,
So are you saying, you said you have some that you might have something different to say?
yes.
But is there a large number of electors that you have challenged their right to vote by mail?
Yes,
Based solely on the fact that they filed a national change of address form?
yes.
With the postal service?
That's,
Okay, I want to identify who those people are, because if that is the only basis, you must make an individualized showing under the law that an elector is unqualified to vote in this county. Okay?
I don't.
And an individualized, thank you. An individualized showing means it cannot be some general database sweep. It can't be based on the Postal Service's use of the word permanent. It has to be specific to their qualifications to vote in Delaware County in this election.
Okay, in that case, then I think that virtually all of these are not something we should be taking up
Well,
today.
Madam Chair, I want to ask, drill down on one question. I heard you say that most of them, yes, this is based on NCOA,
Yeah.
that you believe are filed. What are you basing that belief on?
That I what? Say it again? Like,
You said that you believe to be, they filed an NCOA.
Yeah.
Do you have personal knowledge? Did you actually get records from the Postal Service?
I did not, but
You did.
I work with a lot of different citizens groups
Can
and,
you give it, haven't you worked with Eagle AI?
well, I don't actually personally work with Eagle AI.
Have you received lists from Eagle AI?
Well, I have not personally received lists from.
Has your husband received lists from Eagle AI?
I do not know that. I'm not.
Well, he has told me so.
Challenged with all, okay, well, then that's a thing that he will
So,
have to answer.
so you,
So,
so
but I do-
where do you think these
Well,
came from? If you didn't develop them yourself,
Okay, yeah,
if you didn't ask the Postal Service for
Right.
NCOA records
right,
and bump them against the
right.
voter
Right,
registration
right.
rolls and or the rolls of
Right.
who applied for a mail-in
Right.
or absentee ballot, who did this?
Well,
Not you.
I communicate with groups in multiple states who do things like.
Can you name one?
Yeah, what's the name of that group?
Can you identify for us who you're talking with right now?
I'm sorry, what?
Can you please identify the gentleman you're talking
This
with?
is my husband.
And his name is?
His name is Dean Dryblevis, and he helps me with a lot of technical.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, none comes to mind at the minute.
Nothing comes to mind right now.
This,
Yeah,
this,
I
this is sorry, Mr. Allen, I want to be, she is per se, I want to just give her some flexibility here, but do you understand what you've done here? We have 143 voters that we have notified that they may not have their mail-in ballots count in a really important election. It's not even over in a way, right?
Right.
And you've done that with not actually having looked to see if each of them
No.
filed a national change of address
Well,
form?
The fact that I am not the person who looked at, a multi-million record.
No,
list of
143. I'm not asking you to look at multi-millions. I'm asking for the 143 people, some of whom I imagine when we hear from them, and I've read the correspondence, they're pretty upset at having had the potential for them to be disenfranchised. Whatever Mr. Stenstrom said, let's be clear, that's what you're trying to do.
Well,
And there may be appropriate bases to do it.
Well-
But if you did it without even doing any research as to whether they've actually filled out the form that on her challenge forms, doesn't she say that they?
Yes, I do. I
Chair,
have.
I'd like to just point out that
Hold on.
what
I'm gonna let Mr.
what she
Albert.
has said in her challenge, of course, she's sworn in her affidavit that the challenge is to the best of her knowledge and belief true, correct, and complete. One of the statements you make in your challenge, ma'am.
Yeah.
I believe that the applicant below is not eligible to vote, and therefore I challenge her/his ballot application. And yet today you appear before us saying you don't expect to find anything.
No.
That you're not
no,
challenging anyone's right to vote. That this is normal, everyday
Yeah, that's-
verification.
that's-
I'm just, honestly, I'm confused. I need
Okay.
someone to square the circle for me.
Okay, thank you. Let me work it.
We are going to let you speak now. You understand the question? What have you done to challenge these 143?
I've
individuals?
been working with several groups of people through.
What have you done?
Can you name one,
Say it again.
please? Can you please name one? You keep saying several groups.
I don't specifically remember the name of the group. There's a group in Connecticut who has been doing a lot of work throughout the United States
All
gathering.
right, you are under oath. I want to know what you have done. These other groups, I don't really care. You are standing here challenging these applicants or these mail-in ballot applicant,
Mhm.
voters. And I want to know what you have done as to these 143 voters to determine that it was right to fill out and swear to and file a challenge to their right to vote in this election.
Well, I personally believe that it is not a necessity that I should have gone through the entire NCOA database myself to do that.
I didn't say that. Again, I'm speaking about the 143 mail-in voters that you have filled out a form, filed it. There are legal
Yes,
ramifications.
and I have done that.
What about them?
And I have done
What have you done
that.
as to them?
Say it again.
What have you done as to the 143?
I have reviewed the material which came to me to note that there is a permanent change of address for those people. And I have come to the conclusion, apparently you don't think this is a valid conclusion, that a permanent address change requested by the NCOA demonstrates not that they should not have the right to vote. I'm not disenfranchising anybody. My
That's what you
question,
said in your challenge.
no,
Saying they're not eligible to vote.
could
and
I
you
speak?
swore-
Am I not to be allowed to speak?
Yeah, go-
You
please
get to
proceed.
interrupt me?
Please proceed.
Okay. If I am not suggesting that people should not be allowed to vote, I am suggesting that perhaps their voting, their record in the SURE system is not an eligible record because they have moved out of Delaware County. I'm not suggesting they can't vote anywhere. My suggestion, my hypothesis, perhaps they're voting somewhere else, which is perfectly legit, but is the Delaware County record correct?
It's actually technically not even against the law to be registered in two places. It is against the law to vote in two places, but there are circumstances under which people could be registered as part of moving.
Exact. and-
Okay, but wait, let me stop again. Did you personally look up the 143 people and validate
No,
when
I
you
did
filled out
not.
this?
No,
You did not.
I personally reviewed the specific set of people that I have challenged, and I have concluded that, yes, they did.
What did
file-
you review what did you review from them? When
I
you say you reviewed it and you said you didn't look at their national change of address form and validate it against the voter roll.
I have a spreadsheet,
Okay.
and that spreadsheet contains, it's this long. I'm sure you've all seen things like this, and it has things like, and just for the people who are listening, please be aware that anyone.
This is not a public, we are in a hearing.
Okay,
Okay, you can't do
you-
public service announcements in your
For
view.
you,
or-
I will state that it is perfectly legitimate to purchase the entire Delaware County voter roll. It can be had for $20, and we purchase it actually once a month so that we can look from month to month and determine what kinds of changes, just to analyze what are the major changes that are going on month to month. It's a very, very, very long string of material, and it will tell you things like what is your SURE ID, which is very important. The SURE ID is the thing which demonstrates that you have an identity. in
But I
the-
want to get
in the-
back to
in
this.
the
What did
system.
you do is that you have this spreadsheet.
Yes.
Okay, did you make the spreadsheet?
No, I did not.
You didn't populate any information in the spreadsheet?
I did not populate it. No, I looked.
Is it an official government spreadsheet?
No, it is not.
It's not our voter roll that you just described. You can get the voter.
There is data from the voter roll.
But how do you know if you haven't validated it? Did someone enter it correctly?
Well,
Do you even know who did create the spreadsheet?
Who supplied this first?
say it again.
Who created the spreadsheet?
This is created by a group of concerned citizens. And I'm really not sure how much specific data you need. I will tell you that my husband is perfectly capable and has reviewed the data in the spreadsheet and has matched it up against the voter roll.
Well, you're the one who
When you-
made
when
the
you-
challenge.
Your husband hasn't filed the challenge.
Yeah, are you not allowed to look for expert opinions? Do you
Yes,
not do that every
And the
day
reason-
in your job?
You are absolutely entitled to, and that's why we're asking. I mean, you said this
let me-
information came to you. It
Let
didn't,
me give you a little bit of
provided it to you?
background
Let's use
so
some
you
active
can
voice,
feel that
maybe?
there's some expertise at play here. My husband was for about 15 years and.
Your husband's
a
not a
project-
qualified, I'm sure your husband is.
He is
Wait,
an
hold on.
expert, he is an expert advisor to me on this.
Yeah, stop. All right, stop. Mr.
Just
Solicitor,
real
go ahead.
quickly, one at a time, just because the poor.
Oh, that's,
Is-
and I speak fast as it is, so I apologize to you.
I'm sure. My question was I just want to answer to my question.
Sure, go ahead.
You used the passive voice to say this information came to you.
Yes,
Who sent the information to you? From where did you
the
get this information?
sent to me by a group which has been specializing in analyzing election
What is that
integrity
group?
issues. I'm not going to discuss that.
I'm sorry, all right. You won't discuss it?
No, I'm not.
You've taken an oath to tell the truth, the whole truth,
I
and
am
nothing
telling
but the truth. And someone on this board who's adjudicating this matters asked you to identify the source of the
I'm not
spreadsheet.
going to do that. I'm not going
What is
to
your
do
reason for refusing to answer that question?
Because I have noticed that anyone who looks at anything relative to election integrity apparently becomes a subject of attack by government entities, and I'm victim of
Are
that.
you afraid of getting someone in trouble?
I'm afraid of getting me in trouble.
Are-
I'm
are-
apparently in trouble right now.
No, no one is saying you're in trouble. We're taking evidence on, you're trying to,
I'm not going to
You're
discuss
asserting that
the
these people
source
are
of
not
my
eligible to
information.
vote in Delaware
If you
County.
decide that you want to eliminate my challenge because I'm not giving you this information, then go ahead.
Let me tell you what I want to do. I want to understand what you did to challenge these voters. And I worked for the government. I am volunteering for the government right now in this capacity, but I worked in the U.S. Attorney's Office for almost a decade and federal government service for more than that. All right.
Mhm.
And to come forward with serious allegations against an individual, which I did in a different way and a different type of proceeding, I had to do diligence. I had to look and see if what I was saying was valid. You can't present evidence. Here you are. This is a hearing. We are going to take evidence. You are testimonially providing presumably some factual basis for your challenges. That is what we are trying to get at. If you have no direct knowledge, when you filled out this, I'm submitting this based on the pursuant to a Pennsylvania statute, 25 PA statute 3146.8F. Based on the following information, I believe the applicant below is not eligible to vote, and therefore I challenge her or his ballot application, just as Mr. Alberts read. And the basis is, and this person is Mr. Allen, the one I'm reading from here, filed a permanent change of address with the USPS indicating that he was moving to a particular address. Our group mailed a letter to him informing that she was still registered in Pennsylvania, and if she wanted to be removed, she would have to submit a removal form to the county election office. I'm not quite sure the basis that you can give that type of advice to a voter, but that's neither here nor there. The letter was there. I assume that, I understand from this that they didn't respond to you. They'd have no obligation to respond to you. Now, so when you say this, that this person, Mr. Allen, for example, filed a permanent change of address with the USPS indicating that he was moving. Do you not personally have knowledge of that?
Yes, no, I was not standing there with him when he
No.
filled
Did
out
you
the
look
request.
up the
I
permanent change? Did
reviewed
you look
it.
at something that is
Yes, I
directly from the change of address, the
I
national?
reviewed a spreadsheet which was provided by an election integrity group which has these data items listed. I resent very much that you just stated, that I quote, that I created a serious allegation against these people. I have not done any such thing. What I have suggested is that there is an NCOA permanent change of address on record for each of these people. I don't know their circumstances. All I know is that is simply a fact that there's an NCOA permanent change of address. I construe that to mean that means that whoever filed that change of address is moving out of Delaware County and would therefore probably be somebody who would not be eligible to vote in Delaware County. I am not asserting that that is true. I am not suggesting that they're doing anything nefarious. No such thing. My situation is such that I said, could we just kind of check and verify this and look into it? That's it. I have made
Ma'am,
no charge against any of these people. And for you to suggest that I'm making a serious allegation is something that I take great umbrage with.
Well, you're not really in a position to be taking umbrage because your vote's not being challenged and these people's vote is, first of all. Second of all, I'd like you to answer one question. Did you personally look at the NCOA database, or are you relying entirely on a spreadsheet prepared by some other group?
One,
Just answer my
One,
question.
I don't have access to the NCOA database, which I should not have. The NCOA database.
It's a public
for
record.
it's a public record, but purchasable for specific reasons, and it has specific stipulations as to why you would be.
So the answer is you did not
No,
review
I
the
did not.
NCOA. You're
I-
relying entirely on a spreadsheet prepared by someone else.
Yes, I
Okay,
absolutely
thank
am.
you.
I would be willing to bet that all of you every single day rely totally on spreadsheets prepared by someone else.
Not when we're challenging somebody's right to vote. vote, ma'am.
I am not challenging.
You're challenging someone's right to vote in Delaware County.
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
And I am challenging it.
On the basis of something that someone told you, essentially, effectively.
No.
They told you in a
it's not that
spreadsheet,
someone
but
told me. It's a spreadsheet which was provided by people who.
in words, they told you in writing, but it's still not, you did not directly examine an official record. Did you visit their house?
Excuse me?
Did you visit the homes
I
of these
did
individuals who you say have
I did
moved?
not stand by Mr. Allen when he filed his NCOA challenge.
Did you do anything other
That's
than
these are
review a
ridiculous
third-party spreadsheet?
Excuse me?
Did you make any other attempt to obtain evidence apart from reviewing a spreadsheet that someone else prepared and sent to you?
Yes, I
And
did.
then a mysterious person who you refused to name. I just want
Yes,
to
I
say
did.
again.
My technical advisor, located right here, is capable of looking at those records and checking them against the Delaware County.
But that's the basis. That third-party spreadsheet is the sole piece of evidence that you used to construct these arguments, insisting that, and you've sworn in an affidavit that you believe that they're not eligible to vote. And your belief is based
In Delaware County.
in Delaware County, and your belief is solely based on the spreadsheet that an unnamed third party has provided to you, not a direct examination of a government record. Is that correct?
Hold on,
A direct examination by yourself, I should say.
hold on. The statement that is made in my challenge is, and it's quoting section 704 of the Pennsylvania Election Code Rules for Determining Residence, says that a person who intends to remain outside of Pennsylvania permanently or for an indefinite amount of time is not eligible to vote in Pennsylvania and is not a qualified elector. Those are not my words. Those are the words from section 704 of the Election Code. What I did is to say, what is the stipulation for making that determination? And that determination is that there is a remaining outside of Pennsylvania permanently. And since I see permanent change of address in the NCOA record, I conclude that that seems that this perhaps might be an issue, and therefore I would like to get it looked at.
That's not answering my question. My question is, you did not directly examine an NCOA record. You examined a spreadsheet prepared by an unnamed third party that purports to represent information that they allegedly obtained from the NCOA database.
Well, I guess you can allege all you want. We all work every.
I'm not alleging anything. I'm asking a question.
What I'm saying is that I work with a number of election integrity groups. They are very competent at what they do. You don't have to believe that, and I'm not asking you to believe that. What
I'm just asking you to answer my question.
I just told you that.
All right,
I work with a number of.
We've
groups.
established that you have not looked at the national.
I have not
Okay.
looked at the
We- all right.
national, I do not even have access to the national change of address. And if I did, I would expect you to wonder how I got that.
I just want to kind of level set, take a moment to just level set
Go
again.
ahead.
Because I think we have a fundamental disconnect here on what is happening. I have one of your forms here. It's to Mr. Allen that just.
Yeah.
It's not- Well, can
Okay.
you clarify, it's not me, Mr. Allen?
Oh, sorry. This is the challenge to Raman A. Allen. All right,
Mhm.
from Edgemont, a voter in Edgemont Township. Okay. And at the top, our form says, because this is what you were doing, is you filled out an affidavit to challenge the application or ballot envelope of a male absentee voter.
Mhm.
Okay. Where I think we may have a fundamental disconnect is you have challenged their application. The effect of that, if you are successful, is that they will be deemed ineligible to vote by mail absentee ballot.
Mhm.
Presumably, in-person balloting is over.
Right.
Okay. Their ballot will, if they cast one, I don't know if Mr. Allen, not the director, has cast one, will be deemed ineligible. Do you understand? Are we in agreement that that's true? That if you are successful in challenging this individual, for example,
Right.
that person's vote by mail or absentee ballot will not count?
Yes.
Okay.
I agree with you.
And so where we have a disconnect up here is, just to make it clear, that is disenfranchisement. It doesn't mean it's impermissible disenfranchisement, okay? It is though it will disenfranchise that voter from having their vote count. Are we on the same page about that? That is the effect of your action if you are successful?
If you will allow me to have a statement after
the
you're
answer
done
is,
with that.
do we
The
have
answer is
agreement?
yes,
Go ahead.
yes, but
Okay,
I would
yes.
like to respond.
Go ahead. I will give you
Okay.
some leeway.
I believe that the purpose for a citizen who's questioning this, who's issuing a challenge, is to get this challenge in front of the Bureau of Elections so that the Bureau of Elections can say, that's a really bad challenge. It's not legit for a number of reasons, and we're going to tell you that, Dr. Bleasdale. Or to say, let's just look into this a little more, and perhaps then to make some conclusion.
Okay,
Or
I'm going to get to that. I do think I understand that. I want to level set. So we're all agreed that the effect of your challenges would, if successful, would be that the voters' vote doesn't count if they voted
Yes.
under the mail or absentee.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So just, again, this is just fundamental because I want to get to what you're saying. I think I hear you, but I'll make sure you get to clarify if I
Okay.
heard it wrong. Okay. You have indicated that this isn't like you're not trying to disenfranchise them.
Right.
Can you maybe imagine if you were this voter, again, I don't know this person, and someone was challenging the legitimacy of their mail-in or absentee ballot, the effect of which, if successful, would mean that their vote does not count. Can you imagine that they would consider that a very serious matter?
Not only do I think they would consider it a very serious matter, it would not surprise me if they were unhappy about it. I would be unhappy about it as well. And I will give you a specific example as to how I think it could be handled fabulously.
I want to, I'm going to run this the way I'm going to run
All
this.
right, let me say, to illustrate, one of the
Yeah.
people that I did challenge, the husband and wife that I did challenge, actually responded to me with an extremely nicely thought out situation saying, no, we really do live where we said we lived. We're living at our beach house because that other house is under construction. You can't even get in there. The post office can't even get in there. But I have the tax records for that house. I have my registration to vote, blah, 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 the whole thing.
Okay, and we have one of those individuals
Yes,
here who's going to testify.
My response to them was, thank you very much. I withdraw my challenge.
Do you-
So the issue.
Are you a doctor? If I'm calling you miss and you're a doctor, I don't.
No,
What is, are you Dr.
PhD, yeah.
Okay, Dr. Bleasdale.
Yeah. none of
Okay,
that- no,
wait,
it's not-
sorry, no, this is I'm running this hearing.
Okay,
Okay.
so the issue.
Do you think do you think that voters owe you as a citizen, when our election bureau has qualified them as an elector? And by the way, goes through a process, continues to go to a process to make sure their vote is properly filed, has all the right authority, signatures that
Yeah.
really are them swearing that they're elector and they haven't
Right.
voted anywhere else.
Yeah.
Do you think that if we've done all of that to qualify these 143 voters, and they file it and we count their vote, do you think that they owe it to you personally to explain to you why they filed a national change of address form and yet voted in Delaware County?
So glad that you say that. No, I do not.
Okay.
The only reason I have this information is for some reason when these challenges went out, all my personal information was taken with them. So all of those people who received a challenge have my personal information. I have received at least one phone call issuing what I consider to be a threat. They said, we know your phone number and we can find your address. So as a process issue, which is really my issue for most of this, as a process issue, wondering why all the personal information of a challenger is released before the challenge is effectively dealt with. So no,
Well, they do have a right. We're not going to call it an accuser. The person
Yeah,
putting
right.
forward the challenge, they have the right to confront the person and understand who's challenging.
I would really like to debate.
But if you have a threat, if you have a threat, I do want to just pause for a second. If someone has threatened you in any way, I do want you to tell the solicitor afterwards. And if it's possible that you've been threatened, we will refer that to the district attorney's
I'm
office.
not gonna, I'm big. I'm not gonna
Well,
discuss that with the
look.
solicitor. This is the issue. That is simply an issue of the process.
But you have said, let's go back. You said that you withdrew challenges based on them getting back to you and explaining their circumstances. So my question with you is, do these 143 people have to explain to you why they can vote when we
No,
have determined?
they have to explain to you.
No, they don't.
That's why this challenge,
We've already determined that they're qualified to receive a mail-in ballot.
in that case, you should simply dismiss all these challenges. If you already believe that's
No,
true, you should
no,
be
you-
able.
Well, we
you
qualify
filed
them,
these
and the burden
challenges.
is on you to present evidence, and you have no specific evidence. I'm going to go back because you did say something earlier, but hold on. All right, so, all right. What evidence? You indicated that you did not look up the national change of address form, right? And
I did not look it
Okay,
up.
I don't want to move back to that. I just want to say, but you did earlier say that there are some voters challenged as to which you have additional evidence. Is that correct?
There is only one challenge that I think is illustrative that I would like to bring up. It appears, however, that if I bring up any challenge, I'm simply going to be told that you've decided that all these people are already authentic voters. So what's, I'm wondering what's
That's the
point?
process. They've been qualified as electors and then they can be challenged. And if they're challenged, the challenge needs to be based on them. It can't be based on some third-party spreadsheet that says that they filled out a form. That doesn't mean that they're not qualified. It doesn't mean that. So that can't be the basis. They have to have, if you have individualized evidence as to a particular voter, we want to hear that because that is different from what so far you've indicated that you've done.
All right. Well, since you are informing me today that to have something like their status on the change of address list is not individualized sufficiently for it to be considered legitimate for your purposes, then I would suggest that we just dispense with all those challenges. And I will give you the information that I have for one, which I think is, and I'm a little nervous about doing that because apparently I'm going to get
Well, if you have
arrested in here.
specific evidence that's individualized to a voter that you're challenging, then the purposes of this hearing is to hear that evidence.
Okay, one moment. Did I give you this information? The one- Yeah. We have the data. Okay. Okay, so for 143 challenges, I hereby withdraw all of them except this one, based on the statements you made that making these challenges based on the NCOA permanent status is not applicable.
Just so we're clear, you're actually withdrawing 142, correct? Because you started with 143 and you were withdrawing all but the one you're about to tell us about.
One, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And I just want to also be clear, since this hearing has already been impaneled, by withdrawing those challenges, you will not get your deposit back.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to pause before we take the evidence on the one individual voter. I just want for the public, this is a recorded hearing. There's a court reporter. There may be people who are interested in this. There's, the press is here. I just want to make it clear. Mr. Parks, could we please explain I don't need a full legal briefing, some of the bases on which people can understand that simply filing a national change of address form is insufficient to establish that a voter is not qualified?
Yes, I'd be happy to do so. Multiple courts have determined that, and I'm now going to quote from a federal court decision, someone would need more information than the NCOA change of address application to know about a voter's permanent move to another voting location, unquote. That's a citation from Fair Fight Inc. versus True the Vote, 710 F Supplement 3rd, 1237, Northern District of Georgia, 2024. Another quote from that case, not only has the NCOA file been criticized as carrying a high risk of false positives, but it also lacks any unique identifier, some data field or combination of data fields that uniquely identifies an individual such that when we see those values in those fields, that we can be certain or very confident that any other time you see those fields, we're talking about the same person, unquote. Now, there's another case that also stands for the same proposition, another federal court decision, recent court case, Common Cause / New York versus Brehm, BREHM, 432 F Supplement 3rd, Southern District of New York, 2020, referring to the NCOA database as, quote, an unreliable measure of voter movement, unquote. There is yet another federal court case addressing this. That is Gibson versus Frederick City, Maryland. That's a Westlaw reported decision. It's a 2022 Westlaw 1706895, Federal District Court of Maryland, 2022. Quote, an individual may forward mail to a new address for a variety of reasons aside from a change of permanent residence and may still be entitled to vote lawfully in Maryland while receiving mail in another location. There is another federal court decision from the federal court in Georgia, Majority Forward versus Ben Hill County Board of Elections, 509 Federal Supplement 3rd, 1348. A 2020 decision out of the Middle District of Georgia that stands for a similar proposition. Finally, 52 USC Section 20507D2 governs changes in voter record status on the basis of NCOA data and lays out a clear process that does not permit automatic removal except in accordance with providing the proper notice and wait time. And that's a citation to the Help America Vote Act.
Is it possible to get, I'd love to get those.
Well, there is a transcript and there will be a posted recording of this proceeding, so you should be
Okay.
able to get them that way.
I will do you the honor to assume that although you were not personally present during those court cases, the literature which came out of them was something that you could consider legitimate to use as part of your basis.
Lawyers do that every day. These are reported decisions and written reporters of cases. See, that's a little bit of a
Do that
different
spreadsheet
thing.
Every day.
Judges and lawyers cite cases every day. That's a little bit different than challenging somebody's votes based on some spreadsheet that some third-party group cobbled together that you haven't actually verified, even though you swore an oath in every single one of these challenges that you did.
I object to your use of cobbled together. I think that's, you're editorializing.
All right.
Do we want to hear from any of the?
Yeah, I do. I just want to say one more thing before we hear, sorry to all those who are waiting, and I appreciate your patience. There's been, and Mr. Allen, I'm going to ask you a question for this different, but similar to what I asked the solicitor. I just want to fundamentally set something straight. We hold monthly public meetings. We have public comment during those meetings. We also have an open mailbox, and we receive calls from individuals who have concerns about whether or not we are running full, fair, and free elections in Delaware County. And Mr. Allen is one of the most responsive people you could ever find to those inquiries by email, by phone, and in the hearings here. He has made himself fully available to explain to people challenges, understandings of what the law is, what the law requires, what it means to keep our voter rolls clear. We have one hearing where we had multiple hearings, but one long one, I think, where we had a lot of explanation about challenges similar to the one you've made by an individual named John P. Child, right? And the diligence that our team did just because a citizen brought forward, similar to you, some question as to whether we were maintaining the the voter rolls correctly. And
Ms. Bleasdale, were you
yeah,
at that meeting?
if you may have been at that meeting. Either way, it's publicly available. I want to, if we are here because you as on a whim, not a whim, I want to take this seriously. If you seriously believe that there are issues with our voter rolls, you can come forward in any of those meetings. You can come forward in correspondence. You can come forward in phone calls to our bureau to find out information that we want people to have, to be transparent, that our voter rolls are consistent with the law, some of which do not allow us for various reasons 90 days before an election, or because there's actual statutes that require process before you take somebody off the voter roll that don't allow us to purge them, but the problem will only be if they vote and they're ineligible to vote in our county. If this is why you brought this, that is something that you could have brought generally. But just again, to be clear, you have brought specific accusations. I know that now 140.
Accusation,
It
please.
is a affidavit to challenge the application of a ballot envelope of a male absentee voter by you. You are challenging them, you're naming them, and you are challenging them, and you're providing a sworn basis that you believe they're ineligible to vote. That is an accusation. If you want to call it something else, that is a challenge. I'll just call it a challenge. But that is what it is.
And Madam Chair, may I just add, furthermore, you're basically stating that the people who have signed these affidavits saying, yes, I'm eligible to receive a mail-in ballot, and then swear on the back of their, sign on the back of their, the ballot that they mail into us on the outer envelope, you're basically saying that they are falsely representing their status as an eligible voter. So you're accusing them of swearing falsely, I guess that would be the term.
And then having our voter bureau improperly send them a ballot when we've determined they're a qualified elector. So all those things have happened. That would have been better brought without specific accusations against individuals who I know from reading some of the correspondence, and we will hear from them, are probably pretty upset at the fact that they could be disenfranchised. But Mr. Allen, if we could just briefly, I think you have laid this out before. We have done diligence on this very issue in our bureau. We did not take it lightly. Mr. Allen did a lot of work with voter reg. I talked to Crystal Winterbottom, who's in charge of our voter registration department. Yes, the day before, during election day, about some of the things that she's done. And mind you, I want to be clear, one of the 143 voters that you challenged is the mother of the head of our voter registration bureau. She could come, we could call her right now and she could testify that her mother, I believe, don't quote me on this, had surgery and went to the Jersey Shore for a period of time. And that's why she had her mail forwarded, so that she lives here. She knows where her mother lives. Okay. So she was pretty upset. All right. So, Mr. Allen, we've done some diligence on this issue, and I just want the public to understand that diligence has been done, even though we've explained it at numerous public meetings. Would you please, if you would, do me the favor of summarizing some of that?
Okay, initially.
If Mr. Allen's going
Okay,
to
go
be
ahead.
speaking, he should be sworn in.
Solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes, so help me God. So when we received these objections, which were filed I believe the Wednesday or Thursday before Election Day, it was incumbent on us, first off, to determine whether or not these individuals had applications to vote by mail. And then the status of those applications. It was incumbent upon us to notify each one of the voters as quickly as possible, either by email or mail, so that they would have a chance to respond. And I take exception to the remarks that were made that while someone responded to me with an email and explained that they had a second home, and I said, well, fine, that's a good enough excuse. I just want to emphasize, some of the individuals in here made a typographical error when they were entering their information either online or when they filled out their application for a mail-in ballot. And as a result of that, their email bounced back to us undeliverable. We were able to detect what the error the voter made, and we were able to reach out to them, and then they were able to respond to us. Many other individuals did not have an email address, so we had to mail them a notice as quickly as we could before Election Day. We worked with the Postal Service over the weekend to have a special drop in Philadelphia to make sure that these were not delayed so that they could possibly reach people across the country who were affected and impacted by these challenges so that they would have a chance to respond either by email or in person at this hearing. Many of those individuals who did respond either by email or by phone call indicated that they have jobs, they have personal responsibilities that does not afford them the ability to be here. And at the same time, the responses were, in many cases, as you'll hear, a little bit, the voters were a little shocked for very good reasons. Now, first off, I want to discuss the apparent lack of due diligence in these. The following cases that you filed are moot and were available to you on public record. You can get the whole status of vote by mail records every day.
Could you define moot?
I will.
Okay.
Sarah E. Dunbar Ortel canceled as undeliverable. Teresa M. Durkin canceled as undeliverable. Doris E. Frame, Sabir Hossein, Dylan B. Resnick, Velma Smith, Michael David Morgan, Catherine Morgan, all canceled as undeliverable. They never had any opportunity to access a ballot, much less return it. That's all a matter of public record. Next, John Robert Lombard is not in the VR system as a current voter. And even if he had returned a ballot, it could not be counted, even if he had access to one. Same with Stephen A. Kroll. Not a current registered voter in Delaware County or on the mail ballot application system for Delaware County. Now I want to go through some of the individuals who took time to respond.
Oh, you know what, Mr. Allen, I do want you to do that, but I do want to,
Okay, go ahead.
what is the name of the individual you're maintaining a challenge against?
Abigail Lemon. Lemon.
Okay, I don't see Abigail Lemon on, I don't know who timer is, but I don't see is Abigail Lemon online here at this meeting virtually?
She's not here.
She's not here. Okay. Then before you do, Mr. Allen, just because I think I've made the individuals who've taken the time to be here virtually.
And I believe Abigail Lemon did not return a vote by mail ballot, so.
Okay, we'll get to her, but for all the voters, sorry, I see Teresa Chen, Lorraine Kung, Molly Scully, Emily Yulu, I apologize if I say anybody's name wrong. Ronald Coran, Sarah Zhang, Nicholas Maston, and can the individual who's listed under timer just tell us your name?
That's me.
Oh, that's you. Okay. It's Sean Rush. Okay, he's not one of the challenge voters. All of you, I just want to make clear that you all know what's happened here today. The challenges to your mail-in ballot absentee voter application have been withdrawn. Nonetheless, you have taken the time to attend today. I've made you wait a very long time to potentially present any evidence. As Mr. Parks indicated, there is no obligation at this point for you to say anything. But if you do, it will be under oath. If any of you would like to speak, and I'll go in the order of who I see on the screen, and we'll definitely start with you, Ms. Chen, because you were referenced earlier, and you also happen to be the upper left box of the screen. I want to give you an opportunity if you would like to make a statement under oath. Again, no obligation to do so. The challenge to your mail-in absentee ballot has been withdrawn. But if you would like to, I do want to give you the opportunity to speak. I'm going to start with you. If I miss a doctor and say Miss or Mr., I apologize. I'll just say Teresa Chen. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. I don't feel a need to speak at this time since it has been withdrawn.
Okay. Well, thank you for your attendance here, and thank you for your responses indicating why you are a qualified voter and should not have been challenged. Next on my box is Lorraine Kung. Are you? Hi there.
Hi, I'm good as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then, oh, sorry, my eyes.
Maston?
Yeah, Nicholas Maston.
Nicholas Maston?
Yeah, thank you so much. I have one question and also a comment I'd like to add.
If you're going to add a substantive comment, I will need to put you under, unless it's a process comment, but if you have a question, I certainly can answer that without you going.
I have a substantive comment as well, so.
Why don't we place Mr. Maston under oath? That way you can say whatever you want and we will hear it.
Madison, can you raise your right hand?
Can you hear her? Yeah, okay.
Can you hear me?
Quiet, but yeah.
Let's get the microphone close.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed.
My question is at this point, so this is a process question, but my question is at this point, given these challenges, have our votes right now been counted?
I will address that. Mr. Allen can correct me if I'm wrong. Your ballots were pulled out of the stream because of the challenge and pending adjudication of the challenge. They have not yet been ruled on because the board had to adjudicate the challenge first. Now that the 142 challenges have been formally withdrawn, those 142 will enter the stream in the ordinary course. And Mr. Allen has a qualification.
The ones that were returned.
Correct. We did not get ballots back from all 142.
Who never returned or even received the ballots in question.
Can we assume that Mr. Maston's ballot was received?
If Mr. Maston's ballot was received and it's listed as recorded in the Department of State system, yes, there were no apparent flaws in the exterior envelope, the signature, the date, the use of the secrecy envelope, and it is awaiting then being counted. Yes.
So then, Mr. Maston, the only reason, I hope you understand that process, your ballot was set aside. This happened.
That makes sense. That's what I suspected. And
no one can say, have you been counted it yet, is because you will still have to go through the normal checks and checks on proper filling out of a ballot. You've already gone through the preliminary exterior envelope ones. And so presumably if you've been listed as received, you passed.
Okay, thank you. My comments, I have two. One is, as you suggested, suggesting that my vote as a voter is ineligible is to me a very serious allegation, and that's why I'm here today. I work as a physician in Philadelphia. Ms. Bleasdale, I live about 1.6 miles from where you are right now. And if you would like to come visit and verify my eligibility or my residence in this county, I would welcome you to. The addition that I want to make is my wife and I lived in Pittsburgh for 3 years and moved to Chicago for 1 year. The change of address form that flagged our, I guess, inclusion in these challenges was when we moved from Pittsburgh to Chicago. We subsequently moved from Chicago to Media in August and filed another change of address form. The fact that we filed 2 change of addresses in a little bit over a year does not appear to have been captured by this database. So I would say that my comment is, in addition to the assumptions that were made leading to this database and leading to these challenges being flawed, the data itself is flawed.
Well, thank you. And we do not rely on that data to qualify you as an elector, Mr. Maston. As you know, you received the ballot. So we did not rely on that data, but that is a great example of why that data is insufficient to establish that you were an ineligible voter, and you're not. So thank you very much.
I do have one question.
Yes, please.
For the record, could you please state when you filed that national change of address to move to Media?
I believe it was August 11th of this year.
So that was August 11th,
2024.
November. So that was 3.5 months before we received and you learned of this objection.
Yes.
Before it was filed.
Just shows the lack of diligence here.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Maston. I really appreciate your time being here and your comments. Sarah Zhang, if you would like to make any comments, you're welcome to.
My case is dropped, right?
Yes.
Yes, your case, they have dropped the challenge to your ballot.
Okay, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Molly Scully, if you would like to make any comments, you are welcome to.
No, I would not like to make any comments at this time, but thank you.
Thank you for your attendance here. Emily Ulu, sorry, I may be saying your name wrong. I apologize. Would you like to make any comments?
You're saying it perfectly correct. I am okay. I have no comment to make.
Thank you. And Ronald Coran, would you like to make any comments?
I was never able to raise him during sound check, so I don't know if he is able to speak to us via Zoom.
Mr. Karan, if you are present, would indicate so in the chat, and maybe we can figure out a way to solve the technical issue of sound separately, perhaps.
All right, well, we will move forward, but if you are able to comment and hear what we're saying and would like to make any comments, please indicate so in the chat. We do appreciate, we hope you can hear us and appreciate your being here. And so that now, Mr. Allen, you're all welcome to continue on, or if you don't want to, you don't have to. If this were a public meeting that you were present physically, you could walk out the door. So I just want to give you that option, but you're also more than welcome to stay. Again, we appreciate your coming here today virtually. Mr. Allen, now I believe you were also going to read some examples of email correspondence that you received from voters in similar circumstances whose challenges have now been withdrawn. Please proceed.
And let's establish, just have Mr. Allen establish as a
Process.
Factual premise that what these are and where they came from.
Yeah, that would be great. As to each one, or if you want to do it collectively, if the story is the same for how you had this correspondence initiated, please proceed with that as well.
The following are emails that we received in response to sending notices to the individual voters, including the notice that, or the challenge that Ms. Bleasdale presented to the Bureau of Elections. I want to preface my remarks by reminding Ms. Bleasdale and the person she pointed to, Mr. DeBilbus, of their presence at a meeting this summer in which we reviewed all of these facets and we explained all of these scenarios in which a national change of address very much was insufficient because people take jobs temporarily out of state, because they are students pursuing higher education temporarily out of state, because they have second homes, because they are serving the United States of America in the armed forces, because they are taking care of an elderly or sick relative, or because they're the one handling the mail for an elderly sick relative. All of these situations were explained to the person that you waved to, Mr. Belbus, during a 2.5-hour in-person meeting in voter registration. So from Kimberly Wynn, as a first-time grandmother to a grandson born in January 2024 with special needs, I occupy a temporary residence in Northern Virginia when I visit it as it is more cost-effective. Because I have had negative experiences with mail delivery at my home in Yeadon, I chose to have the very little paper mail that I still receive delivered to me in Virginia. The response above should satisfy any questions about where I choose to split my time. In conclusion, my license, my registration, and my taxes go to the state of Pennsylvania. Next, from Marissa A. Connolly, Lieutenant Commander, the United States Navy. Pennsylvania is my home. Excuse me. The objection raised against my ballot was based upon data that was inaccurately collected from the United States Postal Service. I submitted a request for mail forwarding while temporarily stationed in Virginia for military duty, which is standard practice for service members to ensure we can receive essential correspondence while serving away from home. The actions of Ms. Patricia Bleasdale in filing this objection against my right to vote as a member of the United States Navy are shameful and rooted in inaccurate information. The objection raised against my ballot attempts to undermine the very principles of democracy that we as military personnel are sworn to protect. I am committed to exercising my right to vote, and I believe that my ballot should be counted with undue barriers. She adds two. This is from Olivia Dlugos. Two family members residing in my home changed their address to Litchfield, Connecticut, but I have maintained my permanent address and voter registration on Chestnut Avenue in Ardmore, PA. This one from Michael Curry. I object to this objection filed against my mail-in ballot. I have a home at 412 Pennsylvania in Prospect Park that I share with my wife and daughter. I also have a vacation home in Villas, New Jersey. In 2020, we were staying at our New Jersey home because of COVID and had our mail forwarded to us at that address. My wife, Tracy, and I are retired and share our time between our homes. I am a PA resident and want my mail-in ballot vote to count. I object to this false accusation. Those are his words.
Mr. Allen, sorry, Mr. Rush is waving to me.
Yeah, I have comments from Mr. Corin. Would you like me to read those out?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's let Mr. Allen finish and then we'll get to that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, you're fine with that. Okay.
Swear.
Do,
All right.
is it substantive comments?
He just would like to thank them he likes to thank everyone for your time on this serious matter, and he's glad that his ballot has been accepted.
Thank you, Mr. Cran. I'm sorry again about the audio issues. That doesn't require you to take an oath, so we appreciate that though. And again, sorry that you had to go through this, but glad you were here. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Allen, you may continue. Thank you, Mr. Rush.
This next from a couple, married couple, Irene and Philip DiDonato. I hereby file an objection to challenge filed by Patricia Bleasdale of Edgemont regarding my status as a Pennsylvania resident. My husband and I are Pennsylvania residents, property owners, and taxpayers. We filed for change of mailing address to our second home in South Carolina due to problems with mail delivery in Drexel Hill. At no time did I file a change in my residency. Ms. Patricia Bleasdale's filing challenge is a disgrace. I request my ballot to be counted. It is my right as a citizen. Next from Lisa Dumitrescu of Havertown. The point of the mail-in ballot is to provide a means for people to vote in their home state while out of state or unable to make it to the physical poll locations. Allowing people with clear motivations to cause chaos and impose time and financial hardship disenfranchises voters, especially when the notice comes 2 days before the election and I am not able to do anything at this late date to be there in person. Forwarding my mail should, in her words, all caps, no way indicate that I am not eligible to vote and use the USPS mail forwarding lists to disrupt the election should be evaluated by the courts. Please look into how many of these objections have been filed by the same person. If this objection is not nullified, I will personally protest and use all resources available in the state of PA to back my vote. Next, from Lorraine Kung. This is an utterly ridiculous objection.
Mr. Allen, she's on the line and I don't know.
Okay.
Miss Kung, are you comfortable with us reading your letter?
That's fine.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Allen.
This is an utterly ridiculous objection that quite honestly, I am personally taking offense to. I was previously living at the Hazard Street address as a graduate student attending Rice University. Even as a student, that would only be a temporary address, not my permanent address. In addition, I have since graduated this past May. I have never changed my registration. I'm attaching photographic evidence, including my current driver's license. This is from Scott Dickler, the son of Ethel Lustig, who was the subject of a challenge. Ethel Lustig and her late husband, Dr. Herbert S. Lustig, resided in Montgomery County for over 30 years. In 2022, Ethel relocated to assisted living in Media to receive the necessary support for daily activities. Her husband passed, and as a result, Ethel Lustig has been living in Delaware County, Media, Pennsylvania, for over 2 years. To manage her affairs, I filed a permanent change of address with the USPS to my home in New Jersey so I could receive Ethel's mail and handle her bills. Therefore, her mailing address is my New Jersey address, but her residential address remains in Media, Delaware County. Thank you for the opportunity to clarify this matter. Best regards, Scott Dickler. Next, from Lisa McDonald. I own a home in Delaware County that I pay a mortgage on. I work and pay income tax in PA. I am currently living with my boyfriend in Maryland. I do not plan on ever selling my home in Delaware County. I have a PA driver's license. Yes, I want to get my mail sent to where I'm sleeping most nights, but everything else about me is based in PA. And lastly, the case that you referenced, Madam Chair, from Anna Marie Winterbottom. Thank you for sending the objection to my ballot to me. I, Anna Marie Winterbottom, date of birth, I'll leave that out, still reside on Franklin Avenue, Broomall, Marple Township, 2nd Ward, 1st District. This is my physical residential address. I am retired and I have a beach house in the state of Delaware that I temporarily have my mail forwarded to, as I had medical procedures done recently and was recovering. I also have a beach house in New Jersey. I have not moved. If and when I make the decision to move, I will update my PA registration. I unfortunately am unable to attend the meeting in person on November 7th, which is also why I cannot vote in person at the polls on November 5th, and ask for a ballot to be mailed to me, but would like you to share this email with the board. And that is just a representation of the more than 50 responses, some of them multiple from individuals that we have received.
All right. So you can see this with which the voters certainly take the challenge.
Yes.
As they should, to their ability to vote in this important election, or in every election is important. You've maintained a challenge against Abigail Lemon. Mr. Allen indicated that there's some information from the Bureau that may be relevant before you present any evidence as to, I assume, Miss Lemon or Dr. Lemon. But Mr. Allen, did you have something about this particular voter that you would like to put on the record?
No, I don't have anything readily available at this time.
Okay.
Did you in fact receive a ballot from Ms. Lemon?
I would have to go down and check to see.
Okay, that was my misunderstanding. I thought you had indicated you wanted to say something. All right, Dr. Bleasdale, let's talk about Abigail Lemon and your challenge.
Okay.
to-
I would like to note that as prior to doing this, that as a process matter, it appears to me that if the Bureau of Elections provided a formal explanation on the Delaware County website as to the issues regarding prospective challenges, much of this could have been avoided.
Well,
because-
we do, because we have a 2.5 hour hearing transcript and.
Well, if
video.
I'm going to present a challenge, one of the things I'd like to be able to do is go to the website and say, how do I do this? And it would be the perfect location to state clearly and with the rationale that the solicitor has brought up, why a change of address to the NCOA is not qualifying on your behalf.
Well,
That would be real. I'm making a suggestion, a process
All right,
suggestion.
I'm just telling you that it's been accomplished, but Mr. Allen, I'll let you comment afterwards. Please continue.
All right. Okay. Ms. Lemon was registered in Delaware County on August 8th of 2015. The record seems to say this is where she lives. This looks to be her location of address.
Have you looked at that record?
And which record?
Do you mean I have looked at it on a spreadsheet?
so it's not a personal.
Hold on, I've looked at it on a spreadsheet, which my husband created because he took that massive record that I can't read and he said, I'm gonna hide the columns that don't show stuff you don't need. This is the information you need.
So the answer is no, you haven't looked at the underlying record to form the basis of your challenge?
I've looked at it, but the spreadsheet that I have doesn't have all the columns from the entire full voter extract because there's about 100 billion columns on there.
But the underlying record is another spreadsheet. It's
No.
not the original
Oh.
documentation.
It's off the voter rolls, right? You got that record off? Yes, yes. The record comes from the full voter extract of the Delaware County voter roll
Got it. Thank you.
from the SURE system.
But you have not yourself looked.
I did look at it. Yes, I did.
This is the spreadsheet that earlier
No,
you would not get. A
No.
different spreadsheet?
this is a spreadsheet which my husband created
Based on the
for
voter
me
file.
as we looked at these. He took the full voter extract, looked at the record, said, here's the record. You don't need to have 155 columns on here. You're not going to be able to look at it. Shall I just put the pertinent data on it?
Yeah, just, look, I've worked with many experts in my life, in my professional life. I don't think in my personal, well, maybe in my personal life. And they prepare spreadsheets because there is no way to sift large volumes of information without
Right.
that facilitation.
Right.
Nonetheless, when I pursue a specific, we're calling it challenge, not allegation, challenge
Mhm.
against an individual, which I have also done in other forms many, many times in my life, I always do the underlying diligence of validating with my own eyes that what I'm presenting is correct in the evidence and not relying only on my experts. Or if I do rely on the experts, I have a legal permissible basis to do so, which in this case, there's nothing in the records about your husband being an expert or a presentation in the affidavit that he's an expert or that he
Okay,
did this.
okay.
So I just want to know, did you look at anything?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
I've been saying that,
Well, you
yes.
said you looked at a
I
spreadsheet, it's a little unclear.
I looked at the SURE,
Okay,
the download of the full voter extract from the SURE system for this record.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
Okay. Her record appears to say that where she lives is 121 Gordon's Drive, Media. But she wants to receive her mail at apartment 9B, 1233 New York Avenue in New York. But she has requested that a mail-in ballot be delivered to a different New York City apartment, which is 414 East 65 Street, 6B, New York, New York. Her voting history is, unremarkable. She only has voted, that is clear on the records, in the 2020 presidential election. Her last vote date is this minute, listed as 11/5/2024, which sounds like it should make sense. However, a side note is that the Sure Voter extract gets updated regularly. And that November 5th date for the vote was actually placed in the system prior to election. So that means that that vote date of 11/5/2024 was put into the system prior to the election.
Yeah, that's done because that reflects the fact that we've received a mail ballot back from the person. Okay.
I'm not questioning that there is a reason for it. I do think that it is typically not a best practice in the data world to insert into a date field something we know is not accurate, because the system of record should be sacrosanct. We should be able to look at the system of record at any moment in time and believe what it says.
With all due respect, ma'am, we follow the rules provided to us by the Secretary of the Commonwealth with respect to populating the SURE database, which is a Commonwealth-wide database, and the rules are not determined by Delaware County for that. They're determined by the Secretary of the Commonwealth.
Didn't suggest
Mr.
any,
Parks,
didn't suggest that it's
Mr.
not.
Parks, I would add that you seem to be omitting an important fact, and that
Okay.
is that in another column, it indicates when that envelope was received. The November 5th is listed as a statement of the date of the election. So, and that's important because, believe it or not, there are times in Pennsylvania when there may be a special election occurring at the very same time that there's a general election or a special primary that may be just days apart. So it's important to distinguish that date in the database. So it's November 5th on all the individuals, but all the individuals also list the date that the
Okay.
envelope was received.
The point that I am making is that all we have to rely on is data. And a lot of mistakes get made because I might use the word permanent address change and you might use that word, that term, and we both mean two totally separate things by it. And this happens all the time in business. It's one of the big things that causes data structures to become really messy. So this is the point I'm making. If the SURE system column reads last vote date and it says 11/5/24, it shouldn't say that 5 days before the election. It's just a point.
To take that point to the people in Harrisburg and have your data entry discussions with them.
There's a lot that needs to be discussed.
Well, let's move off that point. I think Mr. Allen sufficiently
Okay.
explained that we record the
Okay.
date that it was received.
So it appears then that Ms. Lemon has a New York registration, registered to vote in New York on October 27th of 2021. The NCOA mail forwarding request occurred in April of 2022 to a different address from the one where she asked to receive her mail. So I find that confusing. Why are we having these different addresses? She last voted in New York on 11/7/23. So I think that this record could be challenged due to the mail-in ballot application's destination to a different New York City than the Delco voter rolls mailing address. And she was registered in Delco 2015, then registered in New York in 2021, not having removed herself from Delco voter rolls, then generated the NCOA request for a permanent move in April 22, then voting in New York, November 2023, while maintaining a media address on Delco's voter rolls. And again, the issue to me and why I would issue a challenge isn't because I assume that she's doing something nefarious or the Bureau of Elections is doing something nefarious. I just think that there are sufficient anomalies here that it's worth doing some kind of a check. I don't have the opportunity, I don't think, please feel free to let me know if that's wrong, to actually go to the Delco Bureau of Elections and just have somebody's record checked. Therefore, I thought I would issue a challenge because that would cause the checking to occur. So now there is.
Interrupt right there
Dear.
on that point. I'm sorry that I'm wasting your time with trying to help you out because I'm trying to answer your question.
Oh, geez.
This forum and challenges to these applications is not an appropriate vehicle for trying to get clarification of the type of issue that you seem to be seeking clarification of. To do that, I think this was suggested earlier today, you can simply send an email to us at the appropriate email address, or I think you have Mr. Allen's email address. You can reach out to him. When we get to this point, it's the whole reason we have a special form and you have to swear an oath. This is not just, hey, could you check this? We were looking at the records and this struck us as odd. What we're doing here today is determining whether these people have lied in connection with their mail-in ballot application and whether they're trying to commit election fraud effectively. And you've asserted that they are.
So
Now you take the position that we're just, hey, just asking questions here. This is not the vehicle to quote, just ask questions, unquote. Okay? That's why we did everything we could do.
That you are saying that
Ma'am.
I'm suggesting people have lied and are
Yeah,
trying to
you
commit fraud.
absolutely effectively are, because every single person who's applied for a mail-in ballot that you are now challenging that application has sworn an oath in connection with that mail-in ballot. And you are effectively saying this person swore an oath that's untrue and is committing voter fraud by trying to get a ballot they're not entitled to. That is exactly what this challenge you're raising says. If you just have questions about something and it looks like there's an anomaly, you just email Mr. Allen. And I think, with all due respect, that you know this perfectly well, because apparently you were here during the 2.5-hour presentation when this was all explained to you. And we have had board meetings where we've explained that people have raised issues and we've taken those issues seriously and investigated them all the way down to the granularity necessary to either rule them out or correct our records. So I just want to be very, very clear. We have done everything as a board possible to make clear the seriousness of the kinds of challenges that you have advanced here. We have created a form that has a very clear oath on it. And the point of that is to make it clear to the person who's going to pursue the challenge what the challenge means and what is required, by the way, of the person making the challenge. And I don't know how much more we can do. We cannot be your lawyers. But we've literally done everything we can think to do to make it clear that this is not just a forum or a vehicle for those who want to ask questions or note some anomaly that they think is curious. You are basically accusing somebody of election fraud. That's what you're doing here. That's why it's so serious. And that's why we started this presentation with an announcement about that, because that's what we're talking about here.
Could you give me the time? I need to know the minute. What time is it?
It's 10:35 a.m. approximately, based on the clock in the back of the wall.
The fact that you've suggested I'm accusing people of election fraud.
Well, I think everybody who's responding,
That's a fact.
that's a fact. And I think that you heard from the voters that Mr. Allen read their statements, and you heard from the individual that is what you did. And that is, that is what you did. And they know that that's what you did. And that's why they were compelled to respond and defend it when they don't actually have an affirmative obligation to defend their right to be eligible, because that is our job.
Could I continue with this description?
All right. Do we have any actual facts that these anomalies or interesting points indicate that the standard is a person cannot be found to have abandoned their Pennsylvania residence absent a showing of intent to remain permanently or indefinitely in another state? All right. And then an individual.
You asked me to describe the situation. I'm giving it to you. There is now a Delaware
goes into another state, and while there are votes in an election held by the state, the individual shall be considered to have lost residence in this Commonwealth.
Could I?
We don't know if do you have evidence that
there is now a Delaware County mail-in ballot application for this person's inactive, and by that I mean she hasn't voted in a while. Delaware County registration to be sent to a different New York City apartment. So I would think it's reasonable to question.
Right. Did you question it before you sent the challenge, or you're questioning us to provide facts, not in evidence? I mean, you find it confusing, all right? That someone filed a name and address change to New York, but then they're asking for it somewhere else. So, well, let me finish.
Wow.
You find, no.
I'm simply not going to be allowed to speak. This is just amazing.
No, you are,
This is
you have
my
been allowed.
issue.
Okay.
Wait, Dr. Bleasdale, Mr. Allen has the floor. You will be allowed. I will make sure that by the
He
end of this hearing.
interrupted
you-
me, and that's why he
Okay.
has the floor.
Well, I had asked you a question about whether there was specific evidences to this individual other than anomalies that you've noted in records. And I am going to give Mr. Allen the floor temporarily, but I will make sure you have full opportunity to say anything you want at the end of this, his statement, and we'll go as long as you need to. Mr. Allen.
I may be mistaken, but I was replying to a question that you raised. So you said, aren't we allowed to ask this type of thing? And earlier you had said that you found it confusing that someone filed for a name and address change to one New York address, but then applied at another. People are not required. This is not the People's Republic of China. People are not required to advise the government every time they move, or they have a dispute with the landlord, or they move in to take care of an elderly relative, or to do something else, or to check in at a college campus, or what have you. Or maybe took a temporary job, or maybe there was a flood in their building. We don't know. They're asking for a ballot under Pennsylvania law and they're saying that they're eligible to receive it. And then they're saying when they return that envelope that they were eligible to vote in this election. So you make reference to relying on data, and yet you are not really relying on data. You're relying on a spreadsheet from some place that you don't even, you won't state its origin.
Discussing here.
No.
I'm relying on the full voter. How do I have to say this so many times? I am relying on the full voter extract from the SURE system, the system of record for voter rolls in Pennsylvania.
All right, Dr. Bleasdale, you have the floor, please.
Thank you. So I could hypothesize many things. Looking at this situation, I could hypothesize that perhaps someone has stolen the identity of Ms. Lemon and has ordered a mail-in ballot, because you can just order it online without, you don't have to be somebody that is getting checked. Nobody's looking at you. Nobody's demanding an ID. You could order a mail-in ballot for her and have it delivered not to her New York City address, but to some other address. And then you could get that mail-in ballot and you could use it. So to me, the fact that there are multiple addresses involved here could be a problem. It could be something significant. So I think that that's something that should be looked into. I'm certainly not suggesting that she's doing something wrong. I'm suggesting that it would be simplicity itself for someone who is engaged in doing something wrong to steal her identity, use her identity on an online system where it can't really be checked, order a mail-in ballot and order it to be sent to a third address that she may not even know about. So, and this is the type of situation that I think can occur when there are many different addresses involved. And I'm concerned for the voter. So all that I would think would be sensible is for the Bureau of Elections to do a small amount of checking to determine that that's really an address that she's happy having a ballot sent to. So that's what I have. I think that there are sufficient anomalies that out of an abundance with caution, it should be checked at. I do feel that I disagree with the solicitor that, quote, we have done everything we can. I believe that this situation is so difficult to understand. If you don't live in this world of the Bureau of Elections and all the data that's involved, I think it's very easy for citizens to leap to conclusions, do things like come up with challenges that may not meet your specifications. I would suggest that you actually have something like a training class and maybe film it, so that people who are thinking about putting a challenge together get the opportunity to prevent this kind of time being.
So may I respond to that?
No, I know, I said she could go until she's done. So let's just wait till she's done, then I'll let you respond.
So that's all I have to say. I do feel that I'm very concerned about the fact that terms don't mean what they're supposed to mean anymore. And we all think one term means 5 different things. I think that's an issue. I do feel that There are many approved mail-in ballot applications tied to a sure ID, which does not even exist. And to me, the sure ID is kind of the coin of the realm here. Your sure ID shows that you are who you are on the voter record. And all of those 88 million fields on there are tied to that sure ID. So if there are approved mail-in ballot applications that are tied to a non-existent sure ID, that's a problem. There's a lot of them. And I would love to I would like to help with the idea of making sure that, one, we all agree on the terms that we're using. Two, we create a training class so that people who normally get their hair on fire and say everything's wrong and everybody's stealing, maybe we could have something that is more than a public forum. This isn't a good forum to train people. You know, you're going to have people sitting here for 2 hours nodding off while you discuss things. Actually, I know a lot of people who would love to be in a training class where they can understand more about why you make the decisions you make. It would make a big difference. I have to drag people off the ledge all the time saying, what you think you saw isn't what you saw. Stop going crazy, like, you know, quench the fire in your hair. And I'd like to not have to be doing that.
All right, I don't want to go too far off the field because we're really talking about Abigail Lemon. So is there any other, this is not I will.
That's what I had.
This is not a general public comment forum. You're welcome to come to our next meeting during public comment.
That's what I have for the data.
Okay, now, Mr. Allen, then it's, I'm going to move to Mr. Allen.
Okay.
We have another individual who would like to make a statement.
Dr. Mattson, he had a question. Would you like to voice your question since you're already sworn in?
Yeah, you're welcome to, Mr. Metz.
Yeah, so I don't know if the proper procedure, I'm trying to turn my video on. There we go. I don't know if the proper procedure is to ask this of the board or if Ms. Bleasdale herself. But my question is, was there any financial support provided from someone else or any third party to support the cost of these ballot challenges? And if so, I'm curious who those people or persons are.
Did you receive the $10 for payments from some other source? Did you receive any kind of reimbursement of expenses? Did you receive any kind of income for performing these tasks, for filing these challenges? Have you received any financial support for this? And did you did the $10 come out of your pocket or someone else's?
I pay some $10 and.
Some?
Yep, yes, I do.
All of them?
No, and some other people who have helped me kind of get these printed out. And
Can you name those other people, or are they as secretive as the sources?
other people?
Okay.
Can I ask you why you're refusing to name those other people?
Say it again?
Can I ask you why you were refusing to name those other people?
Well, I don't want them to have to be, treated like this. Crazy. Yeah.
Well,
Really? You're here challenging people's right to vote and you think you're the one who's getting a hard time, huh?
I think that this is part of our democracy. We are allowed to do things and we are allowed to question things. We are allowed to say this looks to me as though it really needs to be looked at. And if I do not know that there is a formal procedure to have things looked at, I'm going to come up with the best one I can. And to me, the challenging looked to be the best procedure to say these things need to be looked at. Again, I am not suggesting that anyone who is named in these challenges is doing anything nefarious. I don't think these people are criminals. I'm not suggesting any such thing. And I also am not suggesting that members of the Board of Election are doing something wrong or not doing a good job. I happen to be a big fan of Ms. Winterbottom. I think she's wonderful. So, yeah, I don't, I have not, not only have I not received any financial compensation for doing the work I do, I've probably spent quite a bit of money on it, just trying to.
You just said you did.
Owner alone.
But so you said you did not receive any financial compensation. You certainly received financial assistance in filing these challenges.
Some people contributed some $10. I contributed some $10. Yeah.
Some people.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, again, we're going back to the fundamental disconnect. What you have done is taken individuals, real people. We've heard from some
Yes,
today.
I'm
we've heard
aware of
from-
that.
And you've challenged their eligibility, whether they are qualified to vote in Delaware County.
Yes.
And yet you want to say that this is just make sure we're doing our job and checking the voter rolls, make sure we're sending out mail-in ballots to qualified electors. You want it to be a not specific assertions that you're making about how we could do our jobs better, which, by the way, we are always open to, and we receive regularly, and we hold hearings on, and we give incredible amounts of time. Mr. Allen always responds. If you look at the responses that to people who've emailed him, he provides great detail on the basis for what we're doing. We are trying to be as transparent as possible. That general, hey, are you looking at this? I saw an anomaly in a non-specific sense of a challenge where you have sworn that she should be challenged for potentially being having violated the law, really, by being an unqualified voter seeking to vote in our county. That is the general idea that we do our jobs better. We are way more open to than I can't imagine us being more transparent about our desire to carry that out. But these are specific challenges to real people with real lives that we only question that we can find out about their lives is whether they're qualified to vote in this election in Delaware County. That is the only question.
I take that extremely seriously. I am a person who, if it happened to me, if this challenge happened to me, I would do two things. I would go, oh, for crying out loud, I don't need this extra work. And the next thing I would do is say, wow, this means somebody's actually helping to check to see that I'm who I said I am. So I'm down with that.
Yeah,
but the issue is that I am not attempting to denigrate the time or effort of any of the people who have been challenged. The issue is that I believed that having a permanent address change registered in the NCOA database meant that this was a permanent move, and I was not aware that there is a formal statement anywhere backed up in law that says that what permanent really means. I would love to see it. I would love to see complete definitions of these are the rationales for our truly rendering people ineligible. But I don't see that. I don't see good documentation for that. I don't see anything I can study so that I don't have another avenue to.
So because you didn't have what you believed was a direct understanding of this, we should reach that understanding through direct challenges to voters' eligibility, specific voters.
I would be glad to do
I'm a
it in
little
some
confused.
other way, if there was a way, if there is a mechanism, if there is a process, if there
Okay,
is a.
stop. It's my turn. Did you? I'm going to just assume that some of this was learned to you in the Chester County hearing on this very issue. Similarly,
Was what?
some of this understanding of why there was a problem with the challenges you were making should have been made. You should have been made aware during the Chester County
I did
hearing.
not attend the Chester County hearing. I wasn't there. I don't, I'm not from Chester County. I'm from Delaware County.
But you are working with a statewide group, the people.
I work with
from around the-
many
You
people.
didn't follow up on what happened at this equivalent hearing in Chester County? You don't have any information about that, how it happened?
No, I don't. No.
Go ahead,
have
Mr. Elver.
just to get really focused on the matter at hand here, on the challenge to Abigail Lemon.
Yes.
One of the things you stated in your testimony just now is that, between the various changes of addresses, you
Yeah.
pointed out that you're alleging she voted in New York State in November of 2023. Do I have that correct? Is that a statement you made earlier?
My notes. Yes, last voted in New York on 11/7/23.
Okay, so setting that allegation up here, what evidence do we have? On what basis do you make that assertion? How do you know that they voted in New York in November of 2023? What data?
Let
did you
me ask
examine?
my
Yeah.
person.
But more importantly, did they vote in November of 2024?
The challenger.
Madam Chair,
Come from
we have another question from Molly
Okay,
Scott.
I'll cut to it in a minute. Just, we have a pending question.
That comes from the New York voter roll.
Did you personally examine the New York voter roll?
I did not examine the New York voter roll. My husband pulled that date from the New York voter
So
roll.
your husband where did he obtain the New York voter roll? Online?
You can, yeah, you got it online, right?
Well, we can't hear, I'm not hearing testimony from you unless you're sworn in.
Yeah.
We can go there, but I'm asking you, as the person
Yes,
whose
yes.
name is on the challenge, is the person of
Yes,
record
yes.
who says you have a belief.
Yeah, almost all the
So
votes
this is
from all the counties.
yeah, no, I understand. No, I do. I understand. I'm just trying to establish this
Okay,
for the record.
okay,
Just follow me down this line here.
yeah,
So then this data, similar, I assume, was manipulated into a readable, usable format, similar to the Pennsylvania one, you examined that spreadsheet created by your husband that he derived from a similar data file from New York, or is it
Yes.
the raw data file?
Yes, but I didn't need anything from the New York voter roll aside from these pertinent facts. I
Right,
didn't,
so in
you
that
know,
New York voter roll data, you saw that this person voted in 2023.
Yeah,
Did,
yeah.
okay, I have not seen that data. It was not, you're saying that you saw it. I'd like to see evidence that that was the case, but along with the evidence that they registered to vote and voted in New York, I mean, it's just, there's no actual evidence that you've presented. You're stating what you've seen, that a third party prepared for you. Did this voter later re-register in Pennsylvania after they voted in New York in November of 23?
This is all the data that I have about it.
So you have no, you don't know if they subsequently re-registered in Pennsylvania.
What I did
And
is
you
I
don't-
tried to just kind of put it in a sequential order of what the move.
And I totally get that. And I think I think I understand why you would see that and think, oh, well, this person clearly voted another state and that.
Right, and Dr. Mattson has shown the inaccuracy of some of this data, but I think Mr. Parks, I'm sorry, Mr. Alberts, Mr. Parks is
Sure.
his hand up.
So, Ms. Bleasdale, I would like to go back to your challenge that was filed on, before the deadline on Friday. And it states, I, Patricia Bleasdale, hereby challenge the mail absentee application or mail absentee ballot of Abigail Lemon, who is registered to vote, and then it has address, for the following reasons, and you wrote C attached in your challenge. And then the attachment states, I'm submitting this challenge pursuant to a certain statutory section based on the following information. I believe the applicant below is not eligible to vote, and therefore I challenge her ballot application that has the applicant's name, it has an address, and then you wrote, Abigail Lemon filed a permanent change of address with USPS indicating that she was she was moving to, and it has an address there in New York. Our group mailed a letter to Abigail Lemon informing him that he was still registered in Pennsylvania, and that if she wanted to be removed, he would have to submit a removal form to the county election office. The letter was mailed to him/her in New York, and then goes on from there. Would you agree with me that there is no reference in your challenge to anything about the challenge being based on the person having registered to vote in New York or having voted in New York? That's not listed in your challenge, is it?
The reason I brought this is it seemed to me that it would be a likely circumstance that you'd say, well, so what? What's your basis?
So
I thought
wait
that I should
wait a
provide
second.
it.
Can we answer my question first? Your challenge does not mention anything about the person being registered to vote in another state or having voted in another state since the time they registered in Pennsylvania, does it?
It's a very simplistic challenge, yeah.
Okay.
And you have been asking me on what are you basing this? So I
Okay.
thought I would.
But I want to be clear here. Your opportunity for identifying the basis for your challenge is the form that you file by the deadline. It is lawfully impermissible to use excuse A for the challenge on your form and then come into this hearing and try to come up with an alternative basis for the challenge.
So
Because that doesn't allow the voter, among other things, to respond to the allegation.
So when you've been saying to me several times in the course of this meeting, okay, on what do you base that? Where'd your data come from?
You are
What's the information?
changing the assertion. That's what we're finding out now, real time.
Okay.
Wait, just to be clear,
Wow.
what Mr. Parks is making clear is that you cannot, a person has the right to confront their, again, I'm going to call you an accuser here,
Yeah.
but I'm not meaning that in a
Right.
certain sense.
Right.
You have accused them of not being eligible to vote in this election in Delaware County. And what the law says is that the mail-in ballot application challenges can only be brought on the ground that the applicant was not a qualified elector, and you cannot amend that challenge in this form to create a new basis. The reason is what Mr. Parks is saying is because if we suddenly raised a new basis for somebody who's not here, we have many voters here, we have letters from them, they don't know hey, I'm supposed to explain why I voted in New York or not voted in New York, or that's wrong, or that data is wrong. Dr. Mattson made very clear that some of the data is incorrect. So That is why he's saying that.
Okay.
You are changing your
Okay.
allegation against them, your challenge against them.
And I see where this is going, and you guys are the boss, I understand. So two things. One is, I do think that if she filed a permanent change of address, that is immediately something that my evidence suggests.
And we've already explained to you why that's legally insufficient. Yes.
And I would further say that about 8, 10, 12 times in the course of this discussion, you have been prompting me and peppering me with questions about why did I do it? Why did I think it? Where's my evidence? I'm giving you evidence. So now apparently that's no good. So I guess you have to make the decision. If you believe that this challenge should be disqualified, feel free to do so. I don't have a whole lot more time, so let us please proceed.
Requesting additional evidence is not the same thing as changing the grounds upon which the objection is made. So if you make an objection on the basis of, that they don't reside there based on your evidence is the national change of address. So you're making an allegation that they don't reside there.
Right.
Right?
I don't.
Asking for additional.
And here's the.
Ma'am, please don't interrupt. When we're asking for additional evidence to support the grounds of your objections, that's different. And I understand why the solicitor wanted to cut off my line of questioning. When you're changing the basis on which you're establishing your grounds for an objection, well, that's a different matter. I agree.
So
I
so
think
the
under
evidence.
that,
Is there anything else?
Yes, so it appears that the
I just
evidence
get
that I
the
have
record here.
taken the trouble to compile to demonstrate why I feel that the permanent change of address should be honored as a fact, apparently that is not something that you feel is
It's
legitimate.
not me.
Solicitor,
Yeah.
yeah.
Go
Feel
ahead,
free
Mr.
to, feel free to make your decision.
So let me just ask, make a point of clarification and a request. You have stated what you represent to be what you observed in various voting records and registration records from New York. The appropriate procedure would be to submit the evidence in the form of those records to the board for consideration. Now, whether that's changing your basis for your challenge after the deadline is a separate question, but let's put that question to the side for a moment. Can you present the board with the actual records to which you are referring from New York State that you contend shows that this person registered to vote in New York subsequent to her having registered to vote in Pennsylvania and actually voted in New York subsequent to having voted or registered in Pennsylvania? That is my question. Do you have that evidence to present to the board?
I've got, I will say, if that is the proper procedure, it would be good to have a document that describes the procedure so I could have known what it is. I will ask a question. He's asking if we can provide the evidence that Ms. Lemon changed. We have the voter data? Do we have it from the voter? Yeah. Yes, we have that information. We do not have it with us. And I will have the temerity to state, I was hoping that that was the job of the board of the Bureau of Elections. If now it is responsibility, this is a can of worms you don't want to open. If it's the responsibility for citizens to be doing all this detective work, you're probably asking for a whole lot more of these sessions that you probably don't want.
it is not in fact the job of it is in fact the job of our Bureau of Elections, and they in fact do that job. As you said, I mean, you're not suggesting that they have done their work improperly. When you began this proceeding, you said this is normal everyday verification. This is not normal everyday verification. This is an extraordinary quasi-judicial process to attempt to deny the right to vote in Delaware County of 143 initially. Now we're down to one.
I'm
Normal everyday verification is what in fact occurs in our Office of Voter Registration. And that they are professionals, they're trained to do it. They have access to the direct public records, not a third-party spreadsheet prepared by another person. I mean, I'll just go even further. I believe it was stated that Director Allen met with your husband to go over this, these very matters.
With him, no.
No,
He met to discuss a number of situations.
but in that meeting, and correct, this is what Director Allen's testimony stated, that the bases for challenges was covered in that discussion. Now, I know you weren't in that meeting, but that is, I don't know if you're disputing that fact, but that is what was established under oath by Director Allen. Now, you have claimed, now, if you had never discussed this with your husband and just filed this on your own, okay, there'd be a flimsy veneer of credibility here. But you, in fact, have said many times during the course of this hearing that you have relied on.
My husband helps me
Ma'am, I'm
compile
speaking, and I
data.
would ask you not to interrupt when I'm speaking. You have claimed on several occasions that you've relied on him and his unestablished and undefined expertise. We've not entered that into the record. We
Right.
could, I suppose.
Okay.
And frequently during the meeting, when we've asked you a question, you have turned to him to get an answer to that question. You have asked him for clarification on this to that point. You stated that he was the one who pulled the voter files, manipulated the spreadsheets into a digestible format, which I am also familiar with that process. Believe me,
Yes.
I've downloaded these files.
Yep.
These files are huge. They do need to be
Yes.
crunched down.
Yep.
But he is the individual who downloaded the file,
Yes.
manipulated the spreadsheet,
Yep.
and provided it to you. He's also the individual who met with Jim and was provided with extensive information
Yep.
about the proper bases for a challenge. So if you had never coordinated with him, then I'd say, well, okay, she wasn't informed. I don't talk to my wife about everything, and I don't make that assumption.
Yeah.
But you are establishing that he is your expert source of information, and now you come here and say that you don't know there's a formal procedure, that you would just like to help. This is not helping.
No, I'm not.
We have a high bar to challenge voters, and to claim that you are not aware when you've initiated this proceeding, when this information is all available to the public. If you had been represented by legal counsel, they would have probably explained this to you better. I understand that you're pro se, so I'm not saying that you're wrong for doing that, but this doesn't seem like an honest attempt to help. It doesn't sound like what you're testifying to on paper in your sworn affidavit is not that you don't expect to find anything, that you don't think anyone's doing anything wrong. You are in fact accusing people of wrongdoing. And when all you have is, words like hypothesize and perhaps, and the type of situation, maybe terms don't mean what they're supposed to mean anymore. Well, I guess your terms, I don't understand them either. And I would just say that, this appears, we're looking at a preponderance of evidence, which is the standard here. I'm not seeing a preponderance of evidence against any of these voters. I'm seeing a preponderance of evidence of what could be a malicious and knowing attempt to disenfranchise voters.
Wow.
I mean, that's more evidence for that than there is for any of these people not being
to disenfranchise voters.
I mean, that is one possible conclusion from what I'm seeing here.
Can I get?
And so I don't see anything to indicate that we should disenfranchise Ms. Lemon or any other voter. And I would move to summarily dismiss the challenges.
I will all been withdrawn, so there's summarily dismissed, Ms. Lemons. I'm comfortable with that. Do you have, I'm not even,
One left is the lemon challenge. The others have been withdrawn.
I'd like to briefly respond to that. I object strongly to the characterization that this doesn't seem like an honest attempt to help. It seems like an attempt to, please don't read my mind. That's really inappropriate. I think that the issue is, and you also made a lot of very vague statements in addressing the issue of my husband spending time with Mr. Allen. There is no reason for me to believe that at that time, Mr. Allen gave him a good written procedure for how we do or do not accept voter authenticity. I think that's really necessary. And if a discussion goes on for 2 hours where we kind of wander around what could be or could not be, that's not sufficient for somebody to come out of it having a good understanding. And I don't have a good understanding based on the discussions that he had, as I have heard them from Mr. Allen. My overwhelming impression was, why isn't this documented? Why is there not, how come inactive means inactive, but it doesn't really mean inactive? And inactive, when a voter's labeled inactive in the voter file, that doesn't really mean inactive. That can mean whatever you want it to mean. I think that's a big problem, and that makes it very difficult for all of us to come up with how we are going to
Okay,
respond.
I need to bring this to a conclusion. We have
Thank
one
you.
voter who wants to say something, and I just want to say something else. Please, I'm really concerned, as Mr. Alberts is, about why we're here today and whether this was an attempt to disenfranchise voters without evidence, without any diligence, without a sufficient basis. I'm very concerned about that. I think the question of who pays the money is because statutorily, there can be conspiracies to disenfranchise voters that involve more than one person. So I just want to refer you, though, right now to every meeting after meeting after meeting where Ms. Winterbottom has come up here and been asked these questions and has explained the process. Mr. Allen has explained the process. All of the things about the challenges, this whole form, everything was in a meeting. So when you say that there's no written, guide to how to try to challenge a voter, there is so much process and so much transparency from our group. It is either you haven't done any diligence, and I think you've been at some of our meetings, you haven't done any diligence to bring it before us, and you have done it naming people. If you named me or Miss Winterbottom's mother, I would be so, not more than angry. I would wonder exactly what Mr. Alberts did. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to disenfranchise me without evidence, and why? Why would you do that? You have no evidence here. I do think we should hear from the, and intimidation is against the law. We do have a voter who would like to say something. Mr. Rush, who is that voter, and are they already under oath?
Yeah, it's Molly Scully. I don't know if she is under oath or not.
Okay, Ms. Scully, are you asking a question or do you have a substantive comment?
I am asking a question.
Please proceed.
Once I applied for a mail-in ballot and a few other voters in the chat confirmed that they also experienced this, I received a letter in the mail to my mailing address questioning my registration validity, along with a voter request to cancel registration. I was hoping to understand if this letter is connected to this challenge. And I believe Dr. Bleasdale mentioned in the conversation of Abigail Lemon that, quote, our group sent her a letter. So if that's the case, can you help to clarify who our group is? I think it's fair for us to understand what group has our personal information.
Question about whether the letters are related to the challenge, because each challenge refers to the challenger or a group with whom she is affiliated having sent a letter. So I think the answer to that question is very clearly yes.
Yeah.
I will not address the second question
No, I
about
mean,
who the group is.
Ms.
because I don't
Scully,
know.
you raised a fundamental question. I actually asked Mr. Allen this offline, it does concern, we have a job to do. We do a lot of diligence. You probably have gotten over your time as a voter correspondence from either our county election board or others about of course, you're an eligible voter. We're going to validate that. There's processes for that. But it does concern me that because you're a voter and voter records are public, including your address, that people can correspond with you and purport to be members of the Delaware County Board of Elections. And I don't know if it was you or another person challenged, but I know from Mr. Allen that one of the challenged individuals did think that the correspondence from this group was official correspondence of our bureau, and it was not. And I don't know that there is a law or action that can stop. You can't, you get probably candidate mailings, you're probably on lists from different parties, you get all of that. And it does concern me that the way this was presented did at least appear to one voter, maybe somebody else, to actually be an official action. It was not. It was not. The official action came when Mr. Allen reached out to you to request if you were available something for this hearing so that we could understand if you wanted to present something. You have no burden to do that. So the answer, I don't know if that answers the second part of your question, because frankly, I can't exactly remember it, but the first part is definitely, we did not reach out to you initially. We did not provide that correspondence. That correspondence was used to try to pursue this challenge here by Dr. Bleasdale.
I will say the second part of the question was, who is the group that's referenced in connection with the letter?
Dr. Bleasdale has apparently, at this point, unless you have something different to say, refused to identify the group. If there is ever something that we'll have to consider, whether there is going to be a referral to investigate this matter and whether it was a concerted effort to disenfranchise voters, Certainly, we do not have the power to require her to disclose the group.
I think that
They didn't do
it's-
anything wrong. I don't understand why we don't provide.
Yeah, I know. I think that it's, the way I would frame up a lot of this that's going on, the term group, is because there are just a lot of people working on this together. There are a lot of individual people who are concerned about the quality of the voter rolls in Pennsylvania. And we spend a lot of time trying to determine how we can help to do some hygiene on the voter rolls. And so there are tons of people across the state. And the term group is simply used because there are a lot of us as opposed to,
Well,
two.
and Dr. Breeley, so I'm going to wrap this up, but I just want to say that this is, people have done this, I would say properly, perhaps frustratingly, but John P. Child filed 11,000 names that he questioned whether they were properly on the rolls. It's my understanding that your husband had long inquiries with Mr. Allen, as did John P. Child. So there is a way to do this that doesn't directly attack a voter's eligibility in a particular election. Go ahead. Yeah, we're getting near the end
I'd
here.
like to.
Go ahead.
I'd like to wrap this up and try to address some of the questions and suggestions.
Okay,
that
wait,
have
I'm sorry. Did you have any further questions directly or Ms. Scully?
For me, no further questions. I'll just reiterate, I think it was said in the chat that I do have full confidence in the elected officials, so to give a safe and fair election. So I don't need anything from kind of strangers or a random group doing this detective work on my behalf with my personal information from unknown or undisclosed sources. So I appreciate what you've all done for this election.
That way, and I would too if I were in your position.
Before we move on, could we just ask, do you have any further evidence to present?
No, I don't.
Okay, then I think that your time at the podium is complete if you have nothing else. Okay.
Thank you. Will I be receiving any?
You could say here, we're not done the hearing.
Say it again?
We're not done the hearing. I just am saying we're done taking your.
Yeah, I'm asking whether or not, relative to this challenge, would I be receiving anything as a resolution, whether or not?
We're not done the hearing. We will resolve everything at
Oh,
at
here,
this hearing.
okay, thank you.
Witness it here.
Mr. Allen.
So there were some suggestions and questions raised by the person who filed all of these challenges. One of which was to suggest that their lack of due diligence, their lack of actually researching anything, it was somehow the fault of the Board of Elections, and that we should provide some form of instruction, whether on the website or perhaps a class on what constitutes a challenge. I just want to make it 100% abundantly clear for members of the public who may be witnessing or watching this video at some later point. There have been no challenges filed at any time in any recent years to anyone's knowledge prior to this year. And the reason is it's an extraordinary attempt to block someone's ballot from being processed and counted. This is voting is an extension of the First Amendment. And these objections are tantamount to standing in the schoolhouse door of the polling place and blocking the voters' access to the polling place. And just as we vigorously defend people's right to enter the polling place and train our poll workers and our constables to be on guard against anyone who would interfere with or otherwise obstruct a voter from entering the polling place, we are trying to express that to you today, the importance of doing that with people who, for whatever reason, have to vote by mail. Now, the suggestion that was made that we need to inform people on how to file challenges, I find personally and professionally irregular, strange, and a bit appalling. And here's why. We also, that is turning the government against the voters and their First Amendment rights to speak and have their voices heard at the polling place. You are trying to ask the government to now not register voters, not provide guidance to voters, but instead to provide information to people to block them from voting. Just as we don't offer classes on how to be a poll watcher and how to watch for things in the polling place, because that would be a partisan act against the voters. We also would never consider, or I would never recommend, having classes or instructional materials on how to file challenges to block people's right to vote. And in closing, I want to try to help you understand the difference between these cookie cutter, copy and paste, mail merge objections that you filed and a real thoughtful objection. When I first moved here and had an apartment in media, there was someone else who's getting their mail at my apartment. They probably never filed an update. And finally, there was literature coming to my apartment in that person's name that was being sent out by political parties and campaigns, encouraging them to either vote by mail or vote in person, to make a plan for election day. And I was concerned as an election administrator that in my own residence at that time in 2021, that someone would cast a ballot, whether in person or by mail, illegitimately. And there was nothing I could do legally to remove that person's registration, because under federal laws, they have 2 federal election cycles before the election jurisdiction can remove that person's registration, even after declaring them inactive. Now, I watched for any application for mail ballot because I would have personal knowledge that that person never had a residence in my apartment, never had the ability to put a head on a pillow or a toothbrush in a glass and actually claim the right to residence. That's the difference between a legitimate, thoughtful, with information challenge, none of which have been filed, by the way, in Delaware County before the 143 filed by you. And the reason I say they were cookie cutter is that they use the identical language and simply inserted the voter's name and their alleged permanent change of address. And lastly, just because the Postal Service uses the word permanent, which is an adjective, doesn't mean that there's confusion. The postal code is not the election code. The constable code is not the election code. The school code is not the election code. We have to govern things under a combination of case law, the election code, and directives from the Department of State, of which there are many related to how and when we can remove voters. So the suggestion today that there aren't processes and procedures for how and when voters are removed is patently false. So I understand what I heard today was a claim that all we're doing is asking questions. And that somehow by not yielding to these questions, not disenfranchising voters based on these questions, we're opening a can of worms. The can of worms is what you opened up on the voters, requiring them to respond in their day-to-day lives if they were fortunate enough to receive notice, if there was no typo either on their part or my part on their email address or in the mailing in their home address. So doing this without personal knowledge and then refusing to even state the source of this information, and then telling us that the government should set up a force to pose against the voters, to better inform more challenges. I find this this entire set of cookie cutter objections, quite frankly, violative and of the Constitution and an infringement on people's right to vote. And I would.
No. Your presentation of evidence is done. If you want to ask questions, you can come to a public meeting where there's public comment. Mr. Al. Do you have a question that will now produce new evidence that you have not presented any evidence yet specific to the individual? I'm going to regret letting you ask this question. I can feel it right now, but go ahead. As your pro se, I will let you ask the question.
Okay, you're making it pretty clear that you actually object to the challenge process. You think that you should.
We're not doing that.
No, that's not what I said at all.
No, you said you don't think.
No, these were cookie cutter objections. No, that is not.
Okay, all right, I must have got it wrong. Yeah. Okay.
Again, we have meetings. Ms. Winterbottom is here. She does incredibly hard work to make sure that eligible voters in Delaware County are in fact eligible before she sends out mail-in ballots and absentee ballots. I am so proud of you even said it yourself. She's excellent. Okay, so we do not have a burden to present to you all that we do to make that happen, but she has done it on several occasions and at public meetings, and I'm sure would do it again if properly asked for some process questions.
For the record, I said the exact opposite.
Right, no,
I
you
said
did.
I would have used the challenge process based on personal information if I had seen someone who still was getting mail and still was registered at my address, that I was powerless to remove the registration. I would have filed a challenge based on personal information, personal knowledge of the situation. And you did none of that in any of these 143 challenges.
That would have been, and that was what you described as a proper challenge because it has an individualized basis for the challenge, yes.
Does Director Allen or anyone else have any more evidence to present?
No, I think we're done. I think, Mr. Parks, if you're okay with it and have no further comments, I do think we want to go through a matter of process. Just to make the record clear, first of all, for the 142 withdrawn challenges, is there anything you would like us to specifically do as they're withdrawn? I don't know that we need to rule on them, but how would you like us to handle that?
I think we should do, and I had indicated something along these lines before our hearing, which is that I think it would be useful for the board to generate a written decision reflecting its ruling, but I think that it would be important for the board to actually, have a vote as to at least the one remaining challenge. Now, I will defer to you, Madam Chairwoman, on whether you feel it is important or useful to deal with a counterfactual in which, had the challenges not been withdrawn, would the board deem them to be sufficient as a matter of law, or more accurately, legally insufficient as a matter of law as guidance for future boards in facing similar challenges? There could be some, benefit to that by way of precedent, and also to future potential challengers who may want to consider whether they have enough evidence to even bring a challenge. So I would leave that to you, but I can see from where I sit that there is some use to addressing that issue and not simply saying they're withdrawn and therefore that's all we'll say about it. But that there's that piece. As to the one remaining challenge, yes, that remains ripe for a consideration by the board. And that is the challenge to Abigail Lemon.
All right, I agree with you, and I'll see if Mr. Alberts is comfortable in a moment on that, but on the suggestion of a sort of prudential ruling to indicate. But I do think, Mr. Allen, if it would be possible to work with you to prepare a written, first as to the first one, and on this one I'm going to suggest, and then I'm going to move this. It may not be beautiful the way I move it, Mr. Alberts, so we can amend it as we go, but, and if, so that we could vote on this, is I suggest that we do issue a decision on the 142 withdrawn challenges. I think that that decision should indicate that they've been withdrawn and therefore any further adjudication of them is moot. But I would, and I think we need to specifically list them by name. That's the part we haven't done here. And I don't really think it's necessary to read 142 names because we have the documents speak for themselves. But in the decision, we should list those names.
We've already undertaken to prepare a template, which we of course had to not populate with the substantive rulings, but it would include an individual paragraph as to each challenge in the template.
Okay. And then consider whether, Mr. Alberts, whether to add to that formal notice that those have been withdrawn and therefore do not need to be ruled on, is a statement, something to the effect of the only permissible ground for a challenge is that the mail-in ballot application is not a qualified elector. Challengers must make a good faith individualized showing based on sufficiently competent evidence that the applicant is not a qualified elector. And that is consistent with Pennsylvania statutes. And I would add to that, I would suggest moving to add to that, that we do not find that any good faith or individual, I find it not in good faith, that my suggestion, or individualized showing, or that any sufficiently competent evidence, no less really, and any evidence insufficient being the National Change of Address database is not a sufficient showing under law, that the applicant is not a qualified elector. So I would want to make sure that in saying that, each part of that statement is emphasized as not having been met here.
I completely agree. I'll second such a motion.
Thank you. So then as to that, if there's no further comment from either of us, then I will bring that to a vote. All those in favor, is that sufficient?
I think that's clear, just and to make the record clear, you're now speaking about the 142 withdrawn challenges.
Right.
Okay, yes.
Yes. All right. With that, all those in favor of the motion as spoken, say aye.
Aye.
None are opposed. That motion passes.
And the remaining challenge?
The remaining challenge to Abigail Lemon. Again, now this is a standing challenge, so the order would not note that it had been withdrawn because it has not been withdrawn. But again, I move to have a formal decision written by this board that says the only permissible ground for a challenge, it's the same thing I'm going to read again, is that the mail ballot applicant is not a qualified elector. Challengers must make a good faith and individualized showing based on sufficiently competent evidence that the applicant is not a qualified elector. I would suggest that our decision be that such a showing on any of those points has not been made as to Abigail Lemon.
I concur and will second that motion.
Okay. Mr. Parks, is there anything you would like to add to that motion?
No, that I understand the motion.
Okay. Thank you. Then if there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. None opposed. That motion passes. All right. I don't know if there's anything left to do, Mr. Solicitor, Mr. Parks, at this hearing.
I don't believe there is. I think that you are able to close the meeting if you so choose as chair.
And he's not here, but he likes to have a motion, still not determined that we have to have.
I will make a motion to adjourn for the sake of formality if one is desired.
I will second that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. Thank you very much. The record is closed. Thank you to the